More on this, I'm joined by Giovanni Bettini, who's a lecturer in global climate politics and international development at Lancaster University in the United Kingdom. Thanks very much for talking to us. Tell us a little bit more about the trends in migration that you see coming up in coming decades, particularly as far as the impact of climate change is concerned.
Yes, good afternoon. There is a growing concern about the possibility that the impacts of climate change will have an impact on human mobility, on a series of forms of human mobility. And so climate change through droughts, desertification, sea level rise is expected to, for instance, be involved in the processes that lead to human displacement. At the same time, climate change is also expected to have impacts on the life of many people by reducing their mobility, which is a story that we hear less often compared to the idea that climate change will lead to large-scale displacement of people. The issue is an important one given the magnitude of the impacts we can expect climate change to have in the decades to come, but is an issue that is made complex by the series of forms of mobility that will be interested by environmental and climate change more in general. So it's very difficult to come up with any very clear trends or numbers. Some numbers, projections about future impacts of climate change on human mobility have circulated, but these numbers are very problematic and have been criticized by the scholar community and by, for instance, IPCC. So it's very hard to provide very detailed scenarios rather than pointing to the importance of exploring the various ways in which the impacts of climate change might impact human mobility.
And how should major powers, major international organisations prepare for this, given that they can't even really agree at the moment about how we should handle migration?
Yes, migration currently is a particularly contentious issue, and this also has impacts on the ways in which countries and organizations are able to understand and address the impacts of climate change on human mobility. There have been initiatives, for instance, in the context of the UN Convention on Climate Change, to address climate-related displacement. One example is the platform on disaster displacement that was launched a couple of years ago by a series of states. Also, there have been initiatives to finance and enhance adaptation efforts in order to make sure that the very problem doesn't occur and materialize. For sure, given that we are dealing with an issue linked to migration, efforts to understand more and then also to address the issue are difficult, and we very easily enter tricky terrains, not least when asylum rights and displacement are concerned.
Giovanni Bettini, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.